Introduction. In 10 minutes, I'll be choking on black fuel oil and my best friend will burn to death. But now, it's 7:50 a.m. I'm finishing my breakfast, and I think the biggest challenge of my life is not being late for my date in Waikiki. In this story, you will live with me America's longest and scariest day. You will see how my house, the unsinkable battleship Oklahoma, will receive 5 torpedoes and turn upside down in just a few minutes, trapping hundreds of guys in a steel trap. You will hear what I heard, the inhuman pounding from under the water, the cries for help of those whom we could not save. You'll feel the heat when the Arizona goes up in the air 100 meters away from us. This is not a dry summary of losses. This is a chronicle of how in 24 hours I turned from a carefree boy into a man with nothing left to lose. Welcome to Pearl Harbor. Welcome to hell. My name is Jimmy, and damn, it was the best morning of my life. I stood at the rail leaning against the sun-warmed metal and squinted at the glare of the water. Pearl Harbor on a Sunday morning is like a carotid artery. Everything flows slowly. The Oklahoma hasn't really woken up yet. Someone was scrubbing the deck, lazily moving a mop. Someone was writing letters home. I remember that smell, the smell of Sunday pancakes from the galley. My friend Mike, a big red-haired guy from Wisconsin, and I were planning a vacation. "Jimmy, I'm telling you, we're going to Waikiki today," Mike mumbled, polishing his boots until they shone like mirrors. "I even ironed my shirt. I'll meet that nurse today, you'll see." I was laughing. We were all laughing. We were in white t-shirts, relaxed. There were giants around us, Arizona, West Virginia, and California. This battleship row seemed like an indestructible wall, steel monsters that can wipe out any city from the face of the earth. Who in their right mind would dare to touch us? I remember how the orchestra at the Nevada started tuning up the instruments for the morning flag raising. There were snatches of laughter, the clink of dishes. Seagulls screamed louder than humans. I looked at my watch. 7:48. "Mike, hurry up. The boat will leave without us," I shouted. Mike raised his head and suddenly frowned, looking up at the sky towards the mountains. He asked, "Exercises? On Sundays?" I looked there too. From the north, a group of dots appeared from behind the clouds. They were walking low, dangerously low. The sound of the engines grew louder, turning from the squeak of a mosquito into the roar of a swarm of angry hornets. But even then, there was no fear. There was irritation. The Army aviation is showing off again. They're interfering with sleep. One of the dots separated and dived onto Ford Island, right in the middle of the harbor. "Look how low it's going, you lunatic," admired someone nearby. And then I saw something black detach from the plane. A second of silence, and then the hangar on the island blew up. The sound hit my chest before it reached my ears. Fireball, black smoke. "What kind of idiot loaded live ammunition for the exercise?" the boatswain shouted. But then the plane came out of a dive, made a turn, and I saw these red circles on the wings. The red sun. The brain refused to understand it. This can't be happening. This is a mistake. But then the second plane passed right above us, so close that I could see the pilot's glasses. He dropped the torpedo. She entered the water with a soft splash and went to the West Virginia, leaving a white trail. "This is not a drill!" The voice from the loudspeaker rose to a screech. "AIR raid, alert! This is not a drill!" Part 2, Hell on Earth, 7:55 to 9 a.m. The world exploded. The first torpedo hit the side of the Oklahoma even before the battle alarm siren sounded. The impact was so strong that I was thrown into the air and slammed against the bulkhead. The lights flickered and went out, and the dim red emergency lights came on. "Get up! Get up!" Mike was dragging me by the scruff of my neck. The ship shuddered once more. The second torpedo, and immediately the third. The sound of tearing metal is the scariest sound in the world. It's like the cry of a dying animal, only 1,000 times louder. Our giant battleship, our home, began to list to port. The water gushed inside instantly. I could hear the screams of the guys in the lower compartments. They were locked in there. They didn't have a chance. "Up there on deck," I yelled, scrambling up the ramp, which was now at a crazy angle. The ship was turning over. The floor became the wall became the ceiling. All the loose objects, boxes, tools, shells, flew down, breaking the bones of those who did not have time to dodge. We got out into the open air, and what I saw was the end of the world. The whole harbor was on fire. The West Virginia was ablaze. The California was sinking into the water. The air was black with smoke and anti-aircraft tracers. Japanese Zeros raced between the masts, spraying the decks with machine gun fire. The bullets struck sparks from the steel and bit into the wood of the deck, into the flesh of people. I saw a guy, just a kid, standing with a fire hose, not knowing what to do, and then he just fell down, mowed down by a queue. We were sliding along the oily side. The Oklahoma was dying. She lay on her side, exposing her red belly, dotted with shells. "Jump!" Mike shouted. We jumped into the water. But it wasn't water. It was a soup of fuel oil, debris, and fire. The spilled fuel was burning right on the surface of the ocean. I surfaced, greedily gulping down air soaked in smoke. My eyes burned from the oil. "Mike!" I shouted. "Mike!" There was no response. Dozens of people were floundering around. Someone was shouting, "Mom!" Someone was praying. Someone was just howling in pain. I swam to the boat that was trying to pick up the survivors. And at that moment, at 8:06 a.m., time stopped. There was a sound that covered everything. The roar of planes, screams, gunfire. I turned my head to the Arizona. The bomb hit the forward powder magazine. The battleship, weighing 30,000 tons, bounced in the water like a toy. He was just torn in half. A column of fire shot up half a kilometer into the sky. The shock wave went through the water like a tsunami, hitting me in the chest so that I almost lost consciousness. The heat scorched his face even from a distance. 1,100 people, 1,100 of my brothers disappeared in a split second. I looked at this fiery mushroom and cried, not from fear, but from impotence and rage. At that moment, I stopped being a 22-year-old guy dreaming of girls. I became a soldier. I swam to the shore of Ford Island. There was chaos. People in burnt rags and underpants, black with oil, grabbed rifles, pistols, anything. An officer grabbed my shoulder and said, "Are you okay, sailor?" "That's right, sir. Get to that machine gun, now. Help them." I ran up to the anti-aircraft crew. We shot into the sky without aiming, just creating a wall of lead. I do not know if we have hit anyone, but we shot until the barrels were red hot, until our fingers were numb. Part 3. After the storm, aftermath, evening. The attack ended as abruptly as it had begun. By 10 a.m., the sky was empty. Only smoke remained. Black, greasy smoke obscuring the Hawaiian sun. There was silence. But it was not the same silence as in the morning. It was the silence of the dead, interrupted only by the crackle of fires and distant sirens. We spent the rest of the day pulling people out of the water. I'll never forget those hands slick with oil, reaching out of the black muck. We pulled out the living and the dead. Sometimes you dragged a man, thinking that you were saving him, but on the shore you realized that there was no one left to save. I found Mike in the late afternoon, in a hospital set up right on the lawn. He was lying on the grass, among hundreds of others. He swallowed fuel oil and got burns, but he was alive. He looked at me with crazy eyes and asked only one thing. "Our ship." "Jimmy, where is our ship?" I couldn't answer him. The Oklahoma lay upside down like a dead whale. There was still pounding inside her hull. The people who remained in the air pockets at the bottom were banging on the casing with wrenches. SOS. We heard their knocking for several more days. It was the scariest sound, knowing that they were there, alive in the dark, and we couldn't cut them out fast enough. I was sitting on the pier in the evening, my white uniform turned into a black rag. My hands were shaking so much that I couldn't hold the cigarette that someone had given me. I was looking at the burning Arizona. It continued to burn and will burn for several more days. There was an emptiness inside me, but gradually this void began to be filled with something else. Cold, heavy hatred. We thought we were safe. We were arrogant. They caught us with our pants down on Sunday morning. They killed my friends. They burned down my house. I looked at the officer who was passing by. He had the same expression on his face. Not fear. Not anymore. "We're not going to let this go, son," he said softly. "We'll be back. We will build a new fleet, and we'll get them, even if we have to walk all the way to Tokyo." That evening on December 7th, looking at the sunset through the smoke of the burning fleet, I realized one thing. The world has changed forever. The old Jimmy is gone. There is only war, and we just joined it. I wiped the dirt off my face, got up, and went to the collection point. There was a long road ahead, but I knew that I would go through with it. Part 4, Echoes from the Abyss. Night of December 7th to 8th, December 9th. No one slept that first night. We were sitting in trenches dug right on the beach, clutching 1903 Springfield rifles. Every shadow looked like a Japanese paratrooper. In the dark, someone opened fire on their own planes returning from the aircraft carrier Enterprise. We saw how the tracers were shooting through the sky, knocking down our guys. The chaos didn't end with sunset, it just got darker. But the worst part started when the shooting stopped. A sound came from the water, from the side of the overturned carcass of the Oklahoma. At first I thought it was the waves hitting the metal, but the rhythm was too clear. Tum tum tum. Tum tum tum. Metal on metal. I looked at the guy next to me, the mechanic from the Maryland. His eyes were white saucers in a face black with soot. "Do you hear that, Jimmy?" "What is it?" he whispered. "My God, they're alive." They were guys trapped in air pockets at the bottom of an overturned ship. Our guys. They were sitting there in absolute darkness, waist deep in water, and banging on the bulkheads with wrenches. SOS. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. At dawn on December 8th, we went out on boats to the hull. We couldn't just sit and listen. We became a rescue team, although we looked more like a gang of undertakers. I stepped onto the red, algae-slick bottom of my hometown ship. I could feel the vibration under my feet, through the inches of steel. They knew we were here. They started knocking harder. "Be quiet!" the officer shouted to the civilian welders who were brought from the docks. "Everybody shut up. We need to identify the compartment." We put our ears to the cold steel. "Here!" I shouted. "They're knocking right below me." This must be the tiller compartment or the aft switchboard. The welders lit the burners. The blue flames hissed, biting into the armor. We worked like madmen. Sparks flew in all directions, burning through our clothes, but we felt no pain. We had to make it. They were running out of air. The water was rising. When we cut the first hole, a whistle came out. It was compressed air coming out. And then there was a smell that I will feel for the rest of my days. A mixture of rotten water, feces, chlorine from batteries, and death. We got 3 people out of there. They were almost blind from the darkness. Their skin was white and wrinkled, like those of drowned people, but they were breathing. One of them, a kid, grabbed my arm so hard that I got bruises. He didn't speak. He just howled into my shoulder. He was the only survivor of the group of 20 people in that compartment. The rest drowned when the ship capsized, but we couldn't save everyone. In another place, when a welder burned through the cladding, we heard a scream. The burner fire ignited the accumulated gases inside the compartment, or possibly the plug insulation. We heard them scream, and then they were quiet. We killed them trying to save them. The welder dropped the burner and vomited right on the body. He was sobbing, sitting on his knees, and beating the steel with his fists. "I'm sorry, forgive me." I stood next to him, feeling like something inside me was finally dying. The pounding in other parts of the ship was getting quieter. By the evening of December 9th, it had stopped altogether. The silence that followed was heavier than the sound of bombs. Part 5, Black Water, December 10th to 14th. The following days merged into one continuous gray blur. We were doing the cleaning. It's a cynical word, but there's no other word. There were bodies floating in the harbor, hundreds of bodies. They swelled in the sun, swaying in a thick layer of Bunker C fuel oil. This fuel oil was everywhere. It covered the shore with a black crust. Seagulls landed on the water and stuck, dying of exhaustion. My job was to patrol the boat and hook up the dead with a boat hook to bring them to shore for identification. Do you know what a person who has been in such a hell looks like? You won't recognize his face. You're looking for tokens, or tattoos, or rings. One day I pulled out the body of an officer. His hands were burned to the bone, but there was a gold watch on his wrist. They were still walking. The second hand was moving, indifferently counting down the time that this man no longer had. I took them off, wiped the fuel oil on my pants, and put them in a bag for my personal belongings. I was shaking with rage. I wanted to throw this watch into the ocean. Why are they ticking? What's the point? In the evening, I went to the hospital to see Mike. He was lying almost completely hidden by bandages. Only his eyes and mouth were visible. "Jimmy," he croaked. The voice was faint, like the rustle of paper. I heard the knocking stop. "Yes, Mike, it's over. Someone." "From our shift? Sergeant Kowalski? Billy the Kid?" I shook my head. I couldn't lie to him. "No, Mike, just us." He closed his eyes and a tear trickled down the bandages, leaving a dark trail. "I want to kill Jimmy," he whispered suddenly. His voice had changed. Steel appeared in him. "I want to get well, take a machine gun and kill them until I run out of bullets. I don't want to go home. I don't want my mom. I want to go to the front." I took his bandaged hand. I felt the same way. The fear is gone. The pity is gone. All that remained was cold, crystal-clear hatred. We were no longer sailors polishing shoes and dreaming of dancing. We have become weapons. A mass funeral was held on December 14th. We stood in rows by the huge mass graves. The chaplain was saying something about sacrifice and eternal peace. But I wasn't listening. I was looking at the flag. He no longer seemed like just a piece of cloth to me. He was soaked in the blood of my friends. I made a vow to myself that day. I'm not going back to Oklahoma, to my dad's farm, until we finish this. A recruiting officer approached, forming new crews. "Wallace James? What is it?" he asked, looking at the lists. "Your ship has been destroyed. You have the right to injury and shock leave. You can go home for a month." I looked into his eyes. My eyes were heavy and senile, even though I was still 22. "No vacation, sir. Sign me up for any ship that goes to sea first. Battleship, destroyer, garbage truck. I don't care. Just give me the gun." I was assigned to a destroyer sailing to intercept the Japanese fleet. I stood at the stern, watching the smoky Pearl Harbor recede. The Oklahoma was still lying there, upside down, like a monument to our carelessness. I touched the badge around my neck. The world burned down on December 7th, but something new has emerged from the ashes, and this something was heading west, across the Pacific Ocean, to bring hell to those who unleashed it. End.